All right, hi all. Welcome to the next session that we have, which is on QA, modern QA from bottleneck to business driver. Firstly, my name is Uthayya. I'm part of the product team here at SupportLogic, and I lead all things QA. All right, so to start with this, I'm going to talk about modern QA, how we at SupportLogic are approaching the problem with QA. And to do this, we are going about it from the viewpoint of all the challenges that we see in QA right now. So just before I go on, just a quick show of hands. Anybody that has a QA tool, it could be auto, manual, anything. So I see 1, 2, 3. Okay, a bunch of us there. Okay, that's great. Okay, so I would understand that these problems are one that are close to home for all of y'all as well. So this should make things a little simpler. So the first one, and obviously the biggest one here, is time and energy, or let's say the lack thereof, right? So to keep things a little interesting, this is an AI conference. This is also well past lunch. I thought a bunch of y'all would be fast asleep, right? So I actually went ahead and asked AI to go ahead and estimate the problem that we have here, right? So I went and asked AI to estimate the total number of hours spent per year in the support space. I was meant to ask you all to guess, but there we go. So, 3 billion, there you go, Chris, winner. Right, so AI comes up and tells us that yearly there are approximately 3 billion hours spent by team members across the planet solving support tickets, right? That's obviously way too much for any one of us to handle. Now, this is a pretty ridiculous number. So I went and asked AI to make this even more ridiculous, right? Or to make it sound more ridiculous. So just for us to understand the sheer scope or the task that QAs or anybody in this industry have. So 2.95 billion hours, what does that actually mean? What that actually means, like I said, in ridiculous terms, is you could have watched the Titanic 900 million times. You could have gone to the moon 41 million times and back. And that roughly translates to 9% of the Earth's age. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what QAs have to do, right? So that's the task we have ahead of us. So now, that's the first aspect. Now, how is it that we at SupportLogic are going to solve for this? Firstly is auto QA, right? Now, with manual QA, how it works is you're going to take in spot checks, randoms, try and understand if this is the right case for you, and you conduct an audit there. Whereas auto QA, we don't look at any one particular case, 2, 3, 4, 5. We just take in everything and audit that. It's always more valuable to get an imperfect analysis on 100% of your sample size as opposed to get a perfect analysis on 2% volume. And I say 2% volume because, believe it or not, industry average highs are about 3 to 5, but industry average is 1 to 2% sample for manual QA, right? Which is, I'm sure you can understand, is obviously too low. So first answer that we have is auto QA, where you're going from a mere 1 or 2%, let's say a bit more, but straight to 100. The next thing with manual QA is that it's obviously fragmented. You are not going to one place to get all of your answers. You're not going to one particular tool to conduct all of the processes involved from start to end with manual QA. You're probably going to a Sheets, then you're going to a random. I know this because I have a few customers who had actually said what they would do is if they had 100 case IDs, they would go on to Google, put in a random picker and say, give me 2. And whatever Google says, those are the 2 that would get audited, right? So there's no basis, it's just luck. So it could be Sheets, it could be trying to understand which ones to pick. Then after that, that goes into a BI tool. Then after that, that goes into email. And then it gets sent over. Now, who really understands what's going on here? Maybe 1, 2, 3, but that's about it, right? So the ability to really get lost is extremely high. SupportLogic, all in one UI, right? So whether it's manual, it's auto, it's how you identify a case, how you audit a case. Once the case audit is complete, sending the feedback, them to come in and consume, all in one UI. The next thing is obviously tied in is that with SupportLogic and auto QA, we basically plug into every CRM. We also have the ability, whether it's an email case, a voice case, a chat case. What you'll also see in the demo ahead is that this particular email or chat or even call could be in Japanese, Italian, Chinese, does not matter at all. How it works for us is we get the case in, we ingest the case in, synthesize, and extract all the sentiment and all the QA aspects to the case, right? What that also means is that with Auto QA, you can directly move from, let's say, an industry high 5% to 100. You can then right size from having one analyst for 25 agents to actually one analyst handling the volume for up to at least 100. And coaching can move from your periodic understanding of whether they're doing well or not to near real time. Why I say near real time is because as and when a case gets closed, Auto QA will almost instantaneously conduct its audit and give you feedback, right? So the instant a case moves into close, the good and the bad from the QA lens, and that is feedback that you have immediately. And lastly is scalability. With manual QA, it's obviously based on the number of team or the number of folks you have. So if you can just hire more folks, your manual QA can scale, right? With Auto QA, that requirement is gone, and you can easily scale with the same team members. And finally, this is something we obviously know, is that there's just so much burnout with regards to the agents because of multiple issues, right? It could be that audits take a lot of time. It could be that there's constantly at least 10 fires that each of them have to put out every day, which, let's be honest, adds a lot of stress, right? We know that there's surveys and reviews that happen only when your customers are really upset, or the surveys when they're really happy. So there's a lot of skewed practices when it comes to manual QA as well. Now let's come to problem number two. Problem number two, and this is what to audit. As I said, I gave you the example where a customer would actually go and take a list of 100 IDs, put this into Google and say, give me 2. And lo and behold, those were the 2 that would get audited. Whether those were the good ones, the bad ones, no idea. So this is still largely one of the biggest problems we have in QA right now is, let's say I'm auditing 50 cases a week, right? Am I still absolutely sure that these are the right ones? These are A, the ones that my team members did a good job, so I can highlight that. B, these are the ones that I know my team members really messed up, so I definitely want eyeballs on those. C, these are the ones that were escalated, so these are the ones that we want them to do right. We want to be able to create a case study on these. We want to be able to then coach based on what happened in these escalated cases, right? But as of now, none of that is possible with manual QA, or it's going to take a really long time to reach there. And staying in line with the theme, I then asked AI, what are the chances that you would get an audit-worthy case? And there you go. It actually estimates that the chances of you highlighting a really good case to audit is a mere 2.5. That's it, right? So let's say if you're going to take 10, even 100, the chances that you're really going to get the good stuff is extremely low. Again, now how do we solve that? First and foremost is Auto QA, right? You're going away from the 1% case, sorry, the 1% sampling or 2% or 5%, and you're going to jump straight to 100, right? So that's largely one aspect gone. And the other aspect to identifying the good stuff is what I like to call semi-automatic QA, which is our assignments. What this is, for those of you that use a case assignment, it's somewhat the same, where we have an intelligent rubric and a form where A, you input your core criteria. Apart from that, we also have the ability for you to filter that based on certain intelligent filters, such as we have signals, which is where our ML and the artificial intelligence aspect of it comes in, which is if you want to only conduct an audit for every case that was escalated, you could do that. You could then say, give me every case that was escalated, plus originated in Europe, plus had a customer effort score of 20 and or below. And for funsies, what you can also do is say, I also want to make sure that each of these cases was at least 40 comments or more, because why are my cases being that long in any case, right? So the ability to ensure that whenever there's manual QA, which effectively means that someone from your team is going to spend their own time and go in and audit, you don't want that time going to waste. So by way of auto QA and semi-automatic QA, our assignments, we make sure that is predefined and you're only going to spend time on the good stuff, right? Now, with that, I come to the third problem. Now, the third one is, I'd say, largely something that most of you are familiar with. The most used term in this industry, our industry, CSAT, right? CSAT, and that's all everybody cares for. Was it good? Did it come back? Was it sent out? So what I like to say is that our industry is over-reliant on these surveys as a whole. It could be CSAT, it could be CES. The point is anything that is survey-based is inherently flawed. Now, why is that the case? Again, staying in line with the theme, I asked AI again, what are the chances of the CSAT score that I get back being reliable? The fact that if tomorrow a customer comes and says SupportLogic was great, the support was great, CSAT gives me a 5 on 5. AI says that the chances of that CSAT score being valuable, where I can then go up to my boss and say, hey, we're doing a good job, we can take the day off, is absolutely a lie, because according to AI, there's only a 1% chance that's actually accurate. Now, why is this the case? Firstly, we see that an engineer only sends out a form when they think they've done a good job. So that's, let's say, half the volume gone. Then Gartner actually tells us that of every survey sent, you only get a response for 1/5 of each of them. So we've already got from our sample size from 100, we've already 1/10 that straight away. And then we have one more layer on top, which is what I like to call resolution bias, which effectively says, let's say you had a case, was open for almost a month, it dragged on, extremely painful. The customer had to come in, reach out, call in, speak to, let's say, a bunch of folks in your organization. Now, after 1 month, it's finally gotten solved. It was such a pain that they've just come and said, you know what, I'm just glad it's solved, everything's back to normal, 5 out of 5, they're happy, they say CSAT is as good as it can be. But is that actually true? Is that really going to reflect the fact that it took 1 month to resolve, it went through, let's say, 10 hands? And the answer is no. So with that, what we have is another metric called CES, which is effort scores, right? But the answer that we have is not just CES. What we say is reliance on just one particular metric is never the answer, right? So at SupportLogic, what we do is we give you QA scores, we give you effort scores. Along with them also come bundled in what we have is our ZTPs, which is a bunch of other ML bundles we have, which go into things like profanity, which go into things like, is my customer not being answered to, go into things like any kinds of threats that were made on case. Now, most of these are rather extreme, I'd say, so you wouldn't really find them being marked on case, or let's say, I hope not. But the first two and all of this really come together to make you, or to give you the confidence that CSAT is no longer what I just want to base my entire team's health on, or my support org's health on. And this is an example, or this is a viewpoint into what exactly goes into our predictive CES. So these are some of the factors here. I'm just going to leave this on for a bit and move on. Sorry. Thank you. And then we come to the fourth one. Now, this was also being discussed in one of the roundtables earlier in the day, which is the fourth problem is effectively trust. Firstly, how can I trust that this particular AI tool, or let's say AI in general, has my interests in mind? How can I trust that there's no bias involved? How can I trust that we've all seen some kind of hallucinations over the past few months whenever we've accessed some of these tools, right? So in a sense, how can I trust AI, right? Because QA it could be something that is extremely important. It could be something that actually defines the livelihoods of your teams, because that is what then defines their performances, right? So what is our answer at SupportLogic is two-form. First is we understand that you might not want to just give up all control. So the first thing that we have is a hybrid way of going about it. So you have auto QA, you have manual QA, and our composite basically says that instead of an auto QA and a manual QA being completely mutually exclusive, these two actually come together, where auto QA could, let's say, just handle the soft skills, could just handle the behaviors that you think are simpler for anybody to audit and that you don't mind an AI tool coming and doing that job for you. However, if you want to then still hold on to the technical bits, the parts that you feel are extremely crucial to your identity, you can still do that. So in this case, auto QA, let's say, contributes an X, and manual QA contributes a Y. Your ultimate final QA score would be an X plus Y always, right? And with that, I'm actually then just going to switch into the demo. Perfect. All right. So what you all are seeing right now is the landing page at Elevate. This is our dashboard. So here is where, whether you're a support lead, a team manager, an auditor, this is the first page that you would see. And here is where you would come in and be able to track, your QA scores, your CES scores, and any and all other metrics that we import into the application from your CRM, right? So let's say you have a CSAT score or a CES score, we can absolutely bring those in and have them shown here as well, right? Now, how this works is from here, it's already got my default org in, and it's also already got auto QA in here as well, right? So I'm just going to first clear that out. So you can see a default view, which is going to give me a combined viewpoint of, let's say, if I have some manual QA, I have some auto QA, all of that's still in, how does it all look? So there's, as you can see, there's also a CES score here as well, right? So at this point, what I'm going to do is from my larger org, I can go into a team view, right, and see the exact same numbers, the exact same data. And from here as well, I can go in further and say, I want to see whether or not Jacob has been in line with the entire team, or is there anything that is standing out. So firstly, I get the same viewpoint. Now from here, if I want to really understand more from a QA lens, I can switch over to the assessment tab, and from here pick in the scorecard, so let's say auto QA. And once I do that, I have a viewpoint that tells me from this particular scorecard, how exactly has Jacob been doing. I'm going to go into what skills and behaviors are. In short, behaviors are the actual trait that we look for, that we scan for, and skills are a group name, right? So over here, I can see a bunch of red, I can see a decent amount of green as well. So there's some things that are alarming, some things not so much, right? So from the dashboard, since I'm seeing a bunch of red here for assistance, I can then click in here, say, okay, I want to deep dive into the negative. And this immediately takes me from the dashboard where I was high-level view to our search page, which is where you get a list of every case that contributed to the selected criteria, which in this case is Jacob, last 1 month, auto QA, and a behavior called assistance, negative, right? So this is every case that contributed to that particular output. Now let's say from here, if there's in particular, I don't want to scan into any one of these, but I know exactly which case I want to go into, I can also just come in, search, and go into the case, right? And this is what one of those cases would look like, right? So right on the top, I can come in and scan see which behaviors were doing well and which not. And once I'm happy with that, I can then start to actually deep dive and go into each particular comment and understand how AutoQA scored. Now at that point, a quick call out is that with AutoQA, since it's computer actually coming in and doing all of it, we have all the time in the world. So AutoQA scans each particular comment individually, granularly, and the authors for each of them get attributed the scores. So let's say if you have multiple engineers on the same case, each of them could get their own case, and the case could get its own score altogether. So if you have 5 agents, each of them could get a different score, and the case could have a 6th score altogether, all depending on how each of them does, right? Now, the things that you'd see here as I scroll is that, again, with Auto QA, it's already done, so there's not much that I have to do. I can just come in and understand whether or not it was done well enough. So for example, let's just go into the first, or the one right on top. So I see an agent and they say, hello, Kathy, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Now, as you see, there is a greetings that's marked. There is the assistance and introduction is completely red, because instead of just saying hello Kanthi, it would have been wise for them to also say welcome to SupportLogic, or that you have reached SupportLogic. Anything on those lines would have also helped there. And for assistance, anything that also said, I will be the one to help you out, and if there's anything, please feel free to reach out. So just a few of those lines would have then come in and given the engineer a green and a green on those two as well. Right now, in the same realm, as I scroll down, you'll see that there's a full QA scoring whether the comment is a voice one. So what I'm just going to do is quickly just click on them. So you'll also see that we have some sentiments that are detected on the voice chart as well. So you don't really have to go into the voice file to understand the good and the bad of the voice call itself. For example, if I were to just come in and click here, so we're seeing the blue is hold. Right, so if I were to come and click here, I don't know if you guys can hear.
I'm just going to place you on hold while I check the details.
That was my voice, apologies. But yeah, so basically,
place you on hold while I check the details.
Starts with a statement about hold, and then you have the hold that starts, right? So that's just going to go on. And as it's going on for too long, you'll see this hold actually converts to what we call dead air, which is basically the opposite of hold, where it's just quiet for no reason. So I'm just going to stop this. There we go. So as I scroll, you'll also see that while Auto QA is completely there for everything text, it's also there for everything voice. It is also there for any and all transcripts that we incorporate. It could be chat with an AI bot as well. All of that will get QA'd and will be available for you all to see here itself. At this point, I'm also just going to point out that this case was actually not in English, but was in Chinese, and that as well is all going to be shown here. So how it works is, for your engineers, when they come in, if there's any case that comes in with another language, it will immediately get translated. They can see that, and even all of the QA that we do is on translated text. So let's say if anything comes in French or in Italian, we then change that to English, and that is when the scoring happens, right? Now, from here, if I want to make, let's say, a quick change, I could absolutely go in and do that. I can also then make a larger change, right, and say, okay, let's do a full manual QA, come in, and I can start from scratch. Now here, how it'll work is I get to pick each particular behavior based on the scorecard. And every time a behavior is marked, I can also leave feedback and be extremely granular, right? I can leave text for each particular feedback, each particular behavior. Now, once I'm done, what I can also do is that I can then go in and sync it all together. So what we just saw in the last step would be feedback that goes for each particular behavior to the author for each particular comment. But for example, if you have 3 engineers that come in for the same case, not everyone played the same role. However, from a customer's angle, they didn't speak to A, B, and C. They spoke to, let's say, SupportLogic, right? So they don't care who it was, they just care it was the company. So from a QA lens, we believe it's also extremely important to tie in the feedback and give case level and not just feedback to whoever was on the case, right? Now, with this, all that we've seen from Auto QA and how one can come in and make the change, right? And manual QA is effectively a way to change those and finally lock in a case. Now, with manual QA, we have a few other aspects and a few other, let's say, ways for a manual QA to not be the final score of a case. One such thing is disputes, which is basically workflows that your engineers, once they come in to elevate, I'm just going to quick pause there, is that this entire tool is actually built for engineers. So they can absolutely come in, raise a dispute, challenge a score. That would then send a mail to the team. The team comes in, changes the score, and from there, once the dispute is done, that case is absolutely locked, right? Like other disputes, I already went through a normal manual audit. The other form of audits I already talked about assignments is bulk auditing, right? So that's what our assignments actually do, and that's where they shine, is instead of going into a case and doing one audit like I just did, which is not practical, you can't really scale that way. With our assignments, you can actually come in, preset or predefine a criteria of rules, who you want to be a part of this assignment, and you can then go in and choose some filters that say, okay, I only want it to be 10 comments or more, I want it to include some signals, LTE, all of that can be done by way of our assignments, right? And lastly, just going to close with this, is our quality console page, which, like the dashboard, is the exact same viewpoint, but from the point of view of your auditors, because most of the focus, the emphasis is always on my agents. Did they do the right job? What is the score that they got? But what about the auditors? Are you actually seeing whether they're doing what they have to? What were the most recent audits done? What were the disputes that are there? So all of that, so you always have one particular viewpoint, one particular access point to come in for all of that as well. And with that, I'm going to actually pause here and move back to the slides. You will see that we also have a few more releases which you will hear more about on day 2, right? But the entire aim of the upcoming features that we have is to answer the next step, which is, now I see a score, what next? So all of that is going to be the biggest thing that you'll see from us in the next few months. Thank you, everybody.